to the Dare to Believe podcast. My name is Kristi Graner, and I'm here with our friend John Thomas from Streams Ministries, president of Streams Ministries International.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes, it's great to still be talking with you, John. We've had some great conversations about prophetic reformation, and both of us are dream interpreters and teach on dream interpretation, biblical dream interpretation.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of crazy stuff out there, but what we teach is rooted in the Word of God. But sometimes there's some people that say they're rooted in the Word of God and get some crazy dreams. And how do you help the body of Christ to discern? Being in the Prophetic Reformation isn't just about getting prophetic words.
Right.
Prophetic Reformation is about discerning which dreams are from God, which dreams are from ourselves and which dreams are from some other source that's not godly.
Yeah.
You know, there's things that happens too. We want to focus on the dreams that are from the Lord, but we need to learn to discern how do we know that? And unless you have some community around you that will help you and some good teaching and you know the Word of God, you can get led into some really weird places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, a few years ago, I had the opportunity to be in this meeting. It was called the Convergence Council.
Yeah.
John Paul did this prophetic roundtable.
Oh, yeah.
I remember sitting there and I'm thinking, I would have paid to be a fly on the wall right now. Because all these people, like 70 people, a lot of them that I considered heroes, like they're people that I recognize. Like books. I knew them. I'd read their books. I'd been at their conferences. I'm like, wow, like these guys are in the room. And we were going through the protocols for New Testament prophetic ministry that we now have on our website. John Paul, Mark DuPont, and a few others had put it together, and we just went through line upon line. So I'm sitting in this meeting, and we get to the point in there about recognizing that somebody that is in New Testament prophetic ministry should teach people the difference between prophesying out of their soul and getting a prophetic word. And I was shocked because I'm sitting there watching the questions and listening to people and realizing a bunch of people in this room don't even know that you can hear soulish prophecy, that there's such a thing. It was mind-blowing.
Soulish prophecy being it originates in your soul.
Out of the soul, or I'm reading somebody else's soul.
Oh, okay.
The two forms. But let's talk about originating, because that's kind of the one that ties back into what you were talking about. Because you can actually program yourself to have dreams.
Oh, for sure.
And people don't realize that.
Well, and some very ungodly spiritual practices teach people to do that.
Right.
Yeah, because there is a power in it, but it's not a godly power.
Yes. But there's also a way to do it without even thinking about that we're trying to program ourselves.
Okay.
So a few years ago, there was some dreams that came out. They're broadcast quite broadly in the prophetic world. People were talking about them. I had people asking me about them. Multiple people, hey, what do you think of this? What does it actually mean?
A lot of excitement around these dreams.
A lot of excitement, a lot of being broadcast.
So there must have been something powerful on the dreams for them to be out there and exciting people, right?
Well, one of the things, it was all talking about political landscape.
Okay.
Right, and when I listen to the dream, like I'm listening to the dream, what the dream means, and I'm thinking, there's nothing in this dream that I couldn't have guessed was going to happen based off of the news.
So there was no revelation.
So there's no revelation there. So when people were asking me, I'm like, well, I mean, I think it's interesting. I don't think it's actually a message from God. I'm not paying that much attention to it. That was my response. Well, a little bit later, the same guy, he put out a couple other dreams, and I was listening to an interview because there was a lot of activity on this. And so I'm listening to this interview, and he's explaining how he spends 4 or more hours a day reading the news.
Feeding his soul.
Feeding his soul.
And it's not evil to the news, but what you take in and what you know in your mind, will, and emotions is your soul.
Yes.
Your mind, your will, your emotions. And so feeding that.
When you form it, it's going to bring back what you formed into it. And so you can actually cause yourself to have dreams or experiences. Now, I don't recommend this. That's called witchcraft and divination. Don't cause yourself on purpose. But people have done this. Like people in some areas, they'll use New Age practices where they will visualize, meditate as they're going to sleep on a particular thing. So sports people will meditate and visualize in their mind doing the perfect play, the perfect whatever it is that they do.
So they're training their soul.
They're training their soul, and then they go to sleep, and they'll dream about doing that thing as they're sleeping. And it actually will give them benefits of practice without the muscle memory, but it actually will ingrain in the
So that
the
in
mind.
itself is not evil.
Not necessarily evil. What becomes bad is when you start doing that without realizing it and calling it a word from God.
Right. Where it translates into being a spiritual thing.
Yeah, because I mean Jeremiah 23 is a great passage in so many ways, and I think is probably one of the most important passages needed for the prophetic movement today. But one of the things that he talks about is people that cause themselves to dream. And I think it's in 23, but I know it's in Jeremiah, where God actually compares his word with the word of the prophets that cause themselves to dream. And it's like the difference between a rock and stubble that just gets burned up. Like one, when you burn stubble, it's flash, it's hot, gets a lot of attention, everybody's looking at it, and then it's completely gone. A wind blows, and there's not even ash left. There's nothing left but a rock. It's firm. And sometimes we actually have to sit back and wait a while to discern. We're so afraid of missing something. I wonder if FOMO is actually a spirit. Oh. Because we're so afraid of missing something that we're like, well, if I don't understand if this is really from God right now,
I better quit.
Yeah, well, what would actually happen? We never finish that. We have that feeling, but we never finish it. So what would actually happen?
And what I like to describe to people is God wants relationship and conversation. Yeah. So he would give you something, and if you're afraid you're going to miss out, ask him. Yeah. He's a good father. Don't think, sometimes we treat dreams like, oh, God threw something in my lap and it's all on me to figure this out. Yeah. And if I don't, it's going to be terrible for me. That's not the way the Lord works. Yeah. He wants a conversation. You know, I years ago I was teaching dream interpretation with a group of people, and there was a lot of families there and a lot of young people there, and the kids were learning as well as the adults. It was really kind of cool. And this young man, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 years old, really wanted a drum set. And so he came and he was talking to me, and he said, I dream about having a drum set. Is that God telling me I'm going to get a drum set? He really wanted to know. And I said, well, tell me about that. And he said, well, I really, really want a drum set. And I put a picture of a drum set right next to my bed. And every night before I go to bed, I look at the drum set, and then I dream about having a drum set. And he wasn't being evil. Yeah, no. He was just training his soul.
This is my desire.
And the Lord knows the desires of our heart, but just don't call that revelation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's not bad to have desires.
Right.
But when we generate it, if we call it the Lord, that's the problem. That's where the issue is. So, thinking about that, I'm not the person having the dream, but I'm hearing about it. How do I know if it's actually the Lord?
Yeah.
And you just gave the answer a second ago. It's the conversation. Again, the FOMO thing. I don't want to miss out on what God is saying. What if there's this great prophecy that comes out and I didn't know about it? Right. And then it happens, and then I find out later that God talked about it. Well, so?
Yeah.
Does that ruin our salvation? Does that make us less of a Christian? Make us less prophetic? What does it actually do? When we think about it, we realize there's actually nothing there. There's no concrete thing that we need to be afraid of. But here's the thing. When you hear something, and I've had to do this because, now in this position of overseeing Streams Ministries, people are asking me about this experience or this prophetic word or this thing that come out. Or I have people sending me stuff. Here's this new prophetic word, and it's constantly, okay, so which ones do I actually pay attention to? Which ones do I listen to? So do people
send it to you because they think you need to know this, or do they send it to you saying, what's your discernment on this, John?
Both.
Okay.
Both. I've had both. Sometimes
And
it's
really, we
like,
have to learn to
do you think that
discern.
this is the Lord?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on
Okay.
this? But a lot of times it's like, oh, here's this prophetic word. Or somebody's hoping that they had a prophetic word and they give it to me because they want me to put it out and let people know about it. So that kind of thing would happen. And so, I'm getting a lot of revelation that's being sent at me. What do I actually pay attention to? And one of the things that I've looked at is, what does my spirit respond to? If my spirit doesn't actually respond to it, then I'm not going to pay attention to it. It may or may not be God, but I don't even need to know if it's God, because if it's not God speaking to me, he's not going to hold me responsible.
Mm-hmm. And it's not necessary for you to shut down what happened or any of that. It's just like, no, that's not doing anything in my spirit.
Right.
God's not telling me to attend to that. And that's okay.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we want to make sure to point out false prophets, and we do need to talk about false prophets, but we don't.
Well, there's a difference between false prophets and immature and mistaken prophets.
Yes. Okay. Speak to that a little bit.
That's a huge difference.
Speak to that a little bit.
A false prophet is somebody that's leading you to a different God. False prophet isn't somebody got it wrong. Somebody got it wrong is a mistaken prophet. They maybe an immature prophet, or maybe they're just mature and they made a mistake. But that's the one where in Deuteronomy 18, you don't fear them. Right. If they get a prophetic word, they say it's a prophetic word, and it doesn't come to pass, do not fear. Yeah, just ignore them. Don't listen to them. If it happens once, you ignore that prophetic word. If you find that it's a theme, you start ignoring that prophetic person. Right?
Oh, yeah, that's like, so if it happens once, just ignore the prophetic word. If you see a consistent giving prophetic words that are not of God, or don't speak to you, just ignore that person.
Yeah. Somebody keeps on predicting things and they don't happen.
That's very interesting, because I know when I was learning the prophetic, we're talking a long time ago, but there would be prophetic voices that would come, and they'd be I'm in the Twin City area, so they'd come to the Twin Cities, and people say, you got to go see this person, you got to go see that person. And the Lord just wouldn't let me go to people. My schedule, I had little kids, my schedule wouldn't allow, but when he wanted me to go to something, my schedule was open, it was easy, and I learned to discern that way. And there were a lot of voices. I don't know if they were good prophetic voices or not. I mean, and it wasn't up to me to tell the world whether they were worthy or not or whatever. But I did know that the Lord was teaching me what he had for me.
Yes.
And that's the first place to discern. And not that we don't ever have to speak out against people who are doing things incorrectly or out of evil or being a false prophet, but it's not our job to decide everybody should not listen to this person. Just because God tells me that something or somebody's ministry is not for me, just because
doesn't mean it's everybody. Nobody should ever listen to him. It just means I shouldn't.
Right.
Yeah.
And what I have learned to pray is, Lord, if there's anything not of you, would you uncover it and cause it to be revealed? Because I don't always need to be the person revealing things, but I can intercede, and my prayers are powerful. So, Lord, would you uncover anything that's not of you and cause us to be brave enough to deal with it when it gets uncovered? And boy, he uncovers stuff.
And then what happens is, let's say that someone's in a position of authority. So like you run a ministry school and run a ministry. I run a ministry school and ministry. If somebody that's part of that or part of my church comes and they're like, hey, I'm going to go listen to so-and-so, and I know so-and-so and I know what they teach, I will say, there's heresy there. Like,
be careful.
You should not go listen to that. Or sometimes I'll say, you know what, there's some confusing stuff there. Be really careful.
So because you're the leader and the authority.
Because I'm the leader and I am responsible for that person. Now, I'm not responsible for that person, the other minister. I don't have any responsibility there. So I don't have any responsibility to tell anybody about them, and I don't have a responsibility to go to them because I don't know them. If I know them, if they're in relationship with me, where I would confront them if I observe something, then I will confront them if I observe something.
It's based on relationship.
But it's got to be based on relationship.
Okay. So relationship either as on a peer level or from a place of authority. How about someone who is under someone of authority, and the person that they're under their authority starts to do something that's off a little bit, like if my pastor or one of my overseers or something starts to do something that's off. What is my responsibility there?
If you're affected by it, then you go to them, hey, I noticed this. This doesn't look right. Is this what you meant? Because maybe what you're seeing is not actually what's going on.
Yes, that's a
maybe
good first
what you're
place to
observing.
start.
Yeah. Well, because I remember an experience. John Paul had done something, and it was specifically related to a person, had kind of broken a relationship with them, and I heard one side of the story, and so I just went to John Paul. I'm like, this, like, why would you do this? This doesn't look right. And he explained it. Like, this is what actually happened. This is why I did that. I'm like, okay, I see your point of view. What I heard was different than what actually happened. Right? It was very different. And he thanked me. He goes, people have just complained at me, but you're the one that actually asked me what happened.
What happened? Mm-hmm.
And so there's a difference between that. One is trying to accuse, which that's Satan's job. He's the accuser of the brethren, not me. But
that's a huge piece.
Oh,
learning not to be the accuser.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not our job to be the accuser.
It's astounding how easy it is to think you know what's going on when you've heard the first story.
Yeah.
There's a Proverbs about that. He who hears the first side thinks he knows what's happened until he hears the other one. And all of a sudden, you wait a second, there's two sides to the story, which means there's at least three truths. Mm-hmm. There's what person A experienced, what person B experienced, and then what actually happened. And those are like, that's a lot to figure out. And my job is not to be judge in that situation. Now, if I'm an elder in that situation, I am called to be a judge, like clearly in 1 Corinthians. But that's a different situation. If I'm not the elder, I'm not called to be a judge, but I can ask, I can go, and if somebody sins against me, I've witnessed that, then I go to them. Mm-hmm. But if it's not that, then it's not my problem.
Yeah. And that's not avoidance. It's just being based on relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Avoidance is when it's somebody I'm in relationship with and I don't say anything.
Yeah. I had a friend of mine that he had this experience. I heard this, I don't remember, first year I was saved. I've never forgotten this experience. He was teaching a class on the prophetic, and he was talking about this experience that he had where he'd gone into heaven in a vision. So visionary encounter, he's still aware that he's there. So he's not like, I don't know if I was in my body or my flesh. He knew. He was having a vision of heaven. But in this vision, he's walking down a residential street in heaven with Jesus.
Okay.
And Jesus is pointing to the different houses and saying, this is this person's, and this is why it's like this, talking about their rewards and their, what they'd done, the fruit of their ministry. And they'd done a couple, and they're coming up to this next house, and there was a dog in the front yard on a chain. And it starts, as they start getting close, this dog runs out to the end of the chain and starts yapping as they're walking by. The whole time. And Jesus just has to stop talking because you can't hear anything anyways. So they get past the house, and they're finally past the yard far enough. The dog stops barking, and my friend is like, that was weird. And Jesus looks at him, he goes, that was weird, wasn't it? He goes, yeah, that was weird. He goes, I never asked for watch dogs in my kingdom. I said watchmen.
Oh, interesting.
And we have too many people that are trying to be watchdogs. They just want to bark at anything they don't understand. Well, we need are watchmen that will only report what they observe, not what they've heard. And that would save us a bunch of problems. Because there's so much that's going on out there. I mean, there's things, the Lord is exposing things. 100%. He is. The Lord is exposing things. Mm-hmm. Not me.
Right. And once the Lord has exposed it, then we have to have the courage and wisdom on how to deal with it. And we get that from him.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. So let's be watchmen, not watchdogs.
Yes, yes. And so when people interpret a dream, it's important to know where you're interpreting from, where your dream has come from.
Yeah.
And when you do so in Streams Ministries, there are several courses, Art of Hearing God. In there's many courses that you have developed, but courses that John Paul developed as well. Yep. And then John Paul's courses are Art of Hearing God, Understanding Dreams and Visions. So in the Understanding Dreams and Visions course, you begin to learn this. That's a course people could take.
Yes.
If they want to learn, how do I tell if this is a soul dream or not? But you also wrote a book that might describe some things that would be helpful for people. You show what your book is.
The thing about the prophetic is whether it's a dream or a vision or a voice that I heard or a prophetic word, it's all the same thing. So when we talk about discerning prophetic experiences, it's the same principle whether it's a dream or not. And so like this book here you were just mentioning, Discerning and Responding to Prophecy. So I'll put it up so you guys can see it. This book it's how do we actually recognize what comes out of the soul? How do we, what are the things that we use to judge prophetic experiences, revelatory experiences, whether they're my own, I had this experience, trying to figure out if it's God, or somebody shared this experience with me and they think I should do something with it. What do I do? So what do you do with that? And then once you've figured out that it was God, how do you respond to it? What do you do with it? And so this is this is a couple decades of pastoral wisdom and counsel that I put down into a nice, and it's a short, easy to read, because I tried to make sure it was just accessible. I didn't want a complicated, treatise. I wanted just something that's very accessible to anybody that's wanting to grow a little bit, and I think it'll help people. Well,
and I love that we're starting to talk about dreams. I'm going to have you stay, and we'll do another podcast and interpret some dreams, because I love watching the Lord speak to you through dream interpretation. I love doing it too. The Lord's speaking in our dreams, and it's so fun. So thank you again for being here. We will continue this discussion in another podcast, but my name is Kristi Graner, and I'm here with John Thomas from Streams Ministries. This is the Dare to Believe podcast. You can find John at streamsministries.com, and you can find me at dtbmn.org. So blessings. See you next time.